All right. I haven't put a video out for a while. Really, no particular reason. Just the weather here in the Northeast has been pretty horrendous. And I think I talked about it on my previous video. The merger between JetBlue and Spirit disintegrated thanks to the Department of Justice. And I was pretty bummed out at the time, and a little bummed out still. I was kind of looking forward to it, but it brings me to this video, which is not a flying video. It's kind of just me talking about the situation that I find myself in. I don't want to call it a midlife or a mid-career crisis, but I'm definitely kind of at a crossroads in my career. And I'm almost to the day exactly at the midpoint of my career. I got my first airline job, which I'll talk about in a minute, in 2005, I want to say, and I'm 43. So I'm about almost 20 years in, with about a little less than 20 years left to go. So I'm kind of in an interesting spot, and I'll kind of talk about how I got here and my options that I have, and how the decision that I make is going to kind of affect potentially the rest of my career. They say you never really know if you make the right decision until the day you retire. So it's, I've been waking up every day, focused maybe on doing one thing, and by the end of the day, I'm back to doing something completely different. And it's the first time in my career where I'm really not exactly sure which path I should take. And again, there's not always an option, right? And I'll talk about that too. So the flying videos are going to be coming back. The airplane goes to annual by the end of April at some point, and there's not much that has to be done on the Cub, so it won't be out for too long. Sun and Fun is coming up. I don't know who's going to Sun and Fun. I'll be there, I think Wednesday, Thursday to that Saturday or Sunday, depending on the weather and what's going on with the kids. But I figured this video, I'd kind of talk about my career a little bit, but YouTube, I feel like, is a little bit more personal than, say, Instagram or Facebook, where I kind of just put videos out there and it's more for the artistic part of it, I guess you could say. YouTube, I think, is maybe a little bit more personality based. So I figured, hey, this might help some of you guys get to know me a little bit better and kind of know to the position, kind of get an idea of the position that I'm in. And I'm sure some of you guys, especially if you're an airline pilot, you have certainly probably found yourself maybe not in a similar position, but during a time where others at your airline were in the similar position. I got some notes here. So really, where I am now is I'm Spirit Captain. I've been there for 12 years. It has been the greatest run that I couldn't ask for more, right? People say that, the worst part about Spirit is telling people that you fly for Spirit, because people are, the bag fees and this and that. But it's really been an absolutely great job. I have loved every second of it. During negotiations, and this is not just special to Spirit, this is with every airline out there that has gone through negotiations, most recently Southwest. The relationship between management and airline pilot, or management and pilot, it gets usually pretty ugly during negotiations, and that's kind of always been the case. The union has their job to do and management has their job to do, and it's not to make the pilots happy, it's to make the shareholders happy, right? And I get it, and everyone accepts that, and that's fine. So that's usually when work gets not fun, you could say. So anyway, here we are. The merger between JetBlue and Spirit is no longer a thing. The Department of Justice, which I could do a whole video on people's personal opinions as to why the merger should have went through or shouldn't have gone through, but it doesn't really matter. It's not going to change anything. The Department of Justice, they don't want any mergers going through anymore. Don't forget, there was Delta and Northwest. There was Continental, United, American and U.S. Airways, Southwest AirTran. They all got to the position of strength and the size that they are now due to mergers. So the Department of Justice feels as though, we don't want that monopoly in the airlines. So number 5 and 6 airline, which would still be the number 5th airline, can't merge because it's not fair to consumers. So whatever the case, the merger's done for now. A new administration may change that. maybe there's a possibility of Frontier and Spirit because they're both ULCCs. Nobody knows. But the stock price, I don't know if you guys were paying attention, but the stock price, JetBlue was going to give Spirit shareholders essentially $33.50-ish a share. And by the time that the decision came out, I think at that point it was like $28 and change. But as of this week, I think the stock actually, I want to say, hit somewhere in the high $3, and now it's like $4.50. So the stock has taken quite a hit. Market cap is like 400 million, where it was probably close to 2 billion a year-ish or so ago. So there's a lot of uncertainty going on with my airline. There's a couple things that have happened. Number one, COVID kind of changed the market dynamics, and this is in a broader sense of the word because I'm not an economist. I don't know how to run an airline. That's why I fly them. But essentially what happened after COVID was international travel was kind of depressed, so all of these legacy carriers kind of changed their route structure to heavily to focus more on leisure travel, like Florida and vacation destinations, stuff like that. And that put a pressure on the ultra low cost carriers, and they have also the past couple of years have figured out that they can offer not only a premium product and like first class, stuff like that, but they can also offer a basic economy on X amount of seats, which is very similar to the ULCC product. That also increased competition. And then one of the bigger things with Spirit, which is unfortunate because it really is out of management, or the pilots, or anyone's control, there's a powdered metal issue with the Pratt & Whitney Neo engines. So there was some kind of powdered metal issue in some of the components of the engine, and you can go look it up. I hate to talk about things that I'm not too certain of, but I can tell you that the words or the term powdered metal will come up, and essentially it's a contaminated metal, and I believe after X amount of hours, it's starting to show stress fractures. So these engines have to be essentially taken apart and the components have to be replaced. Now, the problem is it's taking, I want to say, north of 300 days per engine to get this done. There's lack of engine shops, there's lack of parts, there's really a whole bunch of things that are happening that make it very difficult for this to happen. Now, Pratt & Whitney and the airline are trying to figure out some kind of compensation deal. I don't know what that looks like. Hopefully it's in the next couple months, weeks, we'll find out. But essentially, my airline has been not doing all that well financially because of, like I said, the changing market dynamics, the Pratt & Whitney issue. So all of these things are kind of making it scary, for lack of a better term, right? And here's where it gets tricky is this airline industry in the US, everything is done by seniority. Vacation pay, when you can upgrade, all of that stuff is based on seniority. So I have, let's say, 12 years here, and I'm top, I don't know, I'll say 15%. Summer vacations, I can bid weekends off. I can hold, holidays off, summer vacations. I don't know if I just said that. So all of this stuff is based on seniority. I'm on the bottom right of the pay scale. So for me to just pick up and leave at another airline is a lot harder than it seems. And the reason why is when I came up, I graduated college in 2002, right? So it was right after 9/11. 9/11 happened. Everybody knows what happened. All the airlines essentially went under bankruptcy contracts, and it was very hard to get an airline job. You needed to flight instruct or fly, mail at night to get to your, I think at the time it was, I want to say the minimums for like a commuter job are like 50 or 100 hours multi. So you would get that commuter job, and my first commuter job was for Colgan, flying the Saab 340. And I was 25, and this is important, so remember this. I was 25, got my first job flying a Saab 340 for, I want to say it was $16.50 an hour, $16.50 an hour. I was 25, and I thought I was the coolest cat in the world. I mean, it was awesome. I was so excited for it. I didn't care about the money. I was young. This is what I was working towards. So it was fine. So I did that for about a year, and then I got hired at ExpressJet Airlines, flying the Embraer 145. And that was great because it was a jet, and I got paid. I mean, this was a lot of money. I got paid $22 an hour. I think first year was $22.50, and then second year was 28 or 30. Whatever it was, from 2005 to 2006 to 2013, which is when I got hired at Spirit. I couldn't upgrade because the career progression was still very slow. The industry was climbing out of 9/11. So I was in the right seat of an RJ, ERJ, making $30 an hour. And, it was what it was. I mean, that's what you had to do. You had to wait until you could upgrade. And then when you upgraded, for the most part, there's an exception to every rule, right? But you needed 1,000 hours turbine PIC. So 1,000 hours as a captain in an RJ to get looked at by a legacy airline. And at the time, my goal was Continental Airlines, which is now United. But I remember Continental was paying first officers $29 an hour to fly the 777. Guys and girls were holding the 777 in new hire training. And they had no health insurance for 6 months. And at the time I was 20, I was mid-20s, and I thought, I can't believe people are not excited about this, not jumping at the opportunity. This is amazing. Now that I'm 43 with 4 kids, I can certainly see why people weren't all that excited about it. So, at the time they did have a couple job fairs, and it was very, very competitive to get looked at. You had to, like I said, have 1,000 hours turbine PIC. You had to have a chief pilot meet and greet where someone walked in your resume. And then you had to go through the normal interview process, which at the time was a simulator evaluation, HR, panel interview, which they still do now. So it was very, very difficult to get hired at a legacy airline then. So SkyWest bought my airline, which was ExpressJet, and I was a union rep for 8 years, and I saw the writing on the wall, and this was 2012, 2013. All the airlines were just starting to get ready to start hiring again, because don't forget, there was the age you used to have to retire at age 60, and then age 65 happened right around the time that the economy was clobbered in 2008, whenever the mortgage crisis was. So you had that economy with the economic issues with the mortgage crisis, along with age 60 going to age 65. And there was just very little hope for someone in the industry at the time. It was called the lost decade. And don't forget, at the time, there was, U.S. Airways captains were topped out on the Airbus, I think, around $120 an hour. Delta 777 captains around the time were topped out around, let's say, $180 an hour. Now, $20, $23. Delta doesn't have a 777, but the wide body captain rate for Delta is north of $400 an hour, right? So it's a significant increase. So anyway, I saw the writing on the wall. I saw that they were having job fairs. So I went to a couple job fairs, and it was really, really humbling, because I'd go there and I had, I couldn't upgrade. There was nothing I could do. And I'd hand them my resume, and they'd look at it and say, yeah, this is good. Listen, upgrade, get 1,000 hours, become a check airman, do this, do that. And I was like, okay, thank you for your time. And, get 1,000 hours of turbine PIC. I couldn't even hold captain. So that would be me waiting to hold captain and then fly a year or two to get 1,000 hours turbine PIC. So it wasn't looking very good. So I had met someone that worked for Spirit. I said, hey, go to the job fair. The minimums at the time were 4,000 hours. This is also important to remember. 4,000 hours, you need to have your ATP, but just go anyway and see what happens. So I went to the job fair out in Vegas. I remember I jump-seated out there. I met the Spirit recruiters, and it was, great conversation. And then I jump-seated on a United Airbus from Vegas back to Newark. It was a red-eye, and there was 2 of us stuck up in the jump seat. By the time I landed, I got an email saying, hey, we're going to continue forward with the interview process for Spirit. So I was super excited. I didn't have any turbine PIC. I was still an FO. So at that time in 2013, it was a big deal to get the interview. And then I subsequently got the job. And that was almost 10 years ago, or excuse me, that was 2023, so it was almost 12 years ago. And I'm not gonna lie to you, growing up, my goal was to fly for a legacy airline, which is an airline that was basically around since before deregulation. But think of it as, the big three: Delta, United, American, and then Southwest is, the big three, or the big four, I guess you could call them. And when I was younger, I would have pretty much done anything. I didn't care at the time about the pay. And I remember in 2008 when our airline was furloughing, ExpressJet was furloughing, I don't want to say I didn't care what happened to me, but I was, me and my wife weren't married at the time. We were engaged, but she was doing pharmaceutical sales, and I was not making any money anyway, so it didn't really matter. I had nothing to lose, so it didn't really matter. So then I got hired at Spirit, and I upgraded really quickly. I was on the Airbus, and I went from 30 something to like 68 an hour, whatever it was. It was an increase in pay, so I was happy. And then I ended up upgrading in 2.5 years. So I was at Colgan for almost a year, flying the Saab, and then I went to ExpressJet for 6 or 7 years, or actually it was 8 years. Couldn't upgrade there, and then here I am at Spirit, upgrading in 2.5 years, on the Airbus, which is incredible, right? And at that time, the other legacy airlines were starting to hire a little bit more, and of course I was competitive because I had at that point I had a couple hundred hours of turbine PIC in a not large, but it was an Airbus, right? It was a big deal. But that's when I started to make a little bit of money. It was kind of fun being a captain. I didn't want to, start over per se. It was in the back of my mind, but it was still very competitive. So I wasn't sure if I was able to, if I was going to be able to get an interview. So I continued on, and then I forget who said it, but they say life is what happens when you plan for it. Maybe it was John Lennon, but it really is the truth. Wife became pregnant, and then one kid turned into 4 kids, bought a house. All of these things happened. Spirit got a new contract, and everything was great. So I didn't want to leave because I thought it was great. And I said, now that I'm at the age where I'm having kids and I have a house and I have all these responsibilities, at the time I felt as though it was maybe a little selfish for me to pursue the dream of flying a wide-body airplane. Because the older I got, and certainly now, my priorities and my goals in life are much, much different. I want to maximize the amount of time that I have with my family, with my kids. I want to be around for holidays, for the dance recitals, for the soccer games. All that stuff is really important to me, and that's where my priority is. So I was okay with not flying for a legacy airline. The money was a little bit less. There are ways to make a lot of money with our contract, but I was never really much of a hustler. So I kind of just, whether you want to use the term settle, accepted it, whatever the case was, I was happy with where I was. And, me and my friends always thought, we're going to not, we may stay here, but we're not going to retire Spirit pilots. We'll get bought out, we'll get merged. And that's what we thought was going to happen with JetBlue. We thought, this is great, So that fell apart. And now here I am, right? And post-COVID, take United, for example. They've hired 6,000 pilots since COVID. And what's funny is, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Malcolm Gladwell, really good author, but a lot of his books talk about how there's a lot of chance and luck and randomness involved with a lot of things in life. And a lot of things you control, but a lot of things you don't control. And in the airline industry, timing and luck have a lot to do with where you are professionally. And what I mean by that, and when I talked about before, it was very hard to get a legacy interview unless you had 1,000 hours of turbine PIC, you had to have a college degree, all this stuff. Well, the past couple of years post-COVID, I flew with first officers, no college degrees, and 2,000 hours, right seat, in an RJ, and then a couple hundred hours at Spirit getting hired by the legacy airlines, which I think is great. I wish that was the case when I was, coming up, but it wasn't. And that's not a big deal. Rising tides lift all boats. I think that's great. But the problem then becomes me at 43, having to retire at age 65. I go to another airline. I start at the bottom of a 16,000 pilot list. For the next couple of years, I'm going to be taking a significant pay cut. and I'm going to be junior, really junior, working weekends, working holidays, and then when I can hold captain, whether it's 2-3 years down the road, then I'm going to be junior again. Now, United has captain vacancy spots basically for new hires, which is great because it means within 6 months, once you're off probation, you have X amount of hours, you can get left seat 7-3 in Newark, which is incredible. It's $340 an hour. United's a great airline, so all that stuff is great, but you're going to be junior for a really, really long time. So that's why the amount of hiring they've done the past couple of years and Spirit facing financial difficulty now, it kind of puts me in an interesting position because if all the legacy airlines had just started hiring like gangbusters now, it's like, okay, I'm on the beginning of a hiring wave versus towards the end. And also it is tightening up a little bit as far as competitiveness goes, getting hired by the airline. Now I've got north of 10,000 hours. I've been an Airbus captain for a while. So I'm confident that I do have the experience to move on if I want to. And again, having the opportunity to work for an airline like United, Delta, American, I mean, that's an incredible opportunity. And I'd be beyond thankful to have that opportunity. But again, it's going to come at a cost for the next few years where I'm going to miss out on a lot of stuff, family stuff. But here's the thing, I might not have a choice because if something does happen to the airline, let's say it goes bankrupt and let's say it liquidates. I mean, it's a possibility. Do I think it's going to happen? I don't think so, but do I want to be the last one here, shutting the lights off and then the hiring stops and then what? Then I have to literally go back to flight instructing or go back to, flying a Saab somewhere. And listen, that's better than what guys had in 2001, right? Because when 9/11 happened, the airlines went bankrupt and there were no flying jobs at all. So I'm not trying to sound like woe is me and everyone should feel bad for me because that's not the case at all. This is a pretty unique situation in that the other airlines, for the most part, are all hiring now. American still has a ton of retirements based in Philly. Got a lot of friends there. Fantastic airline. United has stopped hiring for a couple of months, and that's predominantly due to the 737 MAX issues. But again, the hiring is still slowing down, and Delta's slowing down a little bit of their hiring as well. So, I'm in a tricky spot because if I leave and then Spirit makes it through, well, then I gave up all that seniority, which might be a tough pill to swallow. Or I'll leave and I'll be like, hey, this is this legacy gig is the greatest gig ever. We got first class meals and I could bid wide body FO forever and sleep in the bunk and, doze for dollars, as they say. So, those are great opportunities too. So it's just one of those things where I'm in a tough spot because I don't know what the answer is. And I have a lot of friends that are in a very similar position. And usually they all have pretty sound advice and they're all cool, calm, and collected. And a lot of them are concerned and don't know what to do. And that's kind of a weird thing because I'm not used to that. And I've got a whole bunch of different group chats, and it's rapid fire memes or GIFs or jokes, and then occasionally there's that real tough talk like, hey, this is what me and my wife are talking about. What do you guys think about this? And it's strange to have those conversations with your friends that you didn't think you're ever going to have. I never thought I was going to have to think about doing this at 43. But that's kind of the nature of the industry, and that's just kind of what it is. And I talked about me being 25, making $16 an hour and thinking this is the greatest gig ever. And now back to Malcolm Gladwell and timing. There are some people that got their private pilot's license around the beginning of COVID, got hired at a regional airline, spent a couple months there, got hired at, let's say, a low-cost carrier, spent 6 months there, and then got hired at a legacy when they were really starting to hire post-COVID. And they're now captains on, they're wide-body legacy captains. I say wide-body at Delta, the 7.6. They're not flying to Paris, but it's domestic stuff. But they're 7.6 captains, 7.5, 7.6 captains at 25, 26. I mean, that's awesome. And I'm only human, right? So, when I first saw that, I don't think envy is not the right word, because I would want that for myself. I would want that for my kids. But it's, you see that and you're like, wow, they hit it perfectly. And they've been at the airline for a couple of years now, where they're pretty well insulated to any, pending maybe another black swan event. And even then, they're pretty well insulated. So there's a good chance that they have a career that is just, looks like that, versus some people's career that kind of up and down, and it doesn't quite look like such a nice increasing line, right? And that's just kind of the way it is. And I think it's important for people that are coming up. Everyone's going to have a different path career-wise. So don't, what do they say? Comparison is the thief of joy. Don't look at someone's career and think that, they're doing far superior than you. I mean, they very well may be, but don't beat yourself up, because you may be in a new hire class and you have someone like me, mid-40s starting over again because they don't have a choice, or that's the choice that they made. So that's kind of where I've been. That's where my head's been at. I'm kind of dealing with it a little better now. And, the other thing, too, I want to mention real quick is you have all of these stresses going on, and you're still expected to show up on time and fly the airplane professionally, which I do, and I think everyone should. But these are stresses that it's not like the stress of flying down into Central America in the middle of the night with thunderstorms everywhere. That's a type of stress that keeps you sharp. This is a type of stress that can affect your performance. And, or hey, the girl or guy sitting next to you is probably going to get furloughed. I mean, this is tough, all while you're, moving people across the country in the middle of the night. And on top of that, the FAA, though they're attempting to be better at it, you have all of these stresses. You want to go talk to a therapist? Well, guess what? Now your career could really be in jeopardy, because you may lose your medical. So these are just kind of all the things that are kind of going, through my mind, as well as my, friends and employees' mind. So it's just kind of something that I never thought I'd have to face, and here I am facing it. And, the biggest thing is support from my friends at my airline, and also via social media. Guys and girls from other airlines are like, hey, I saw what's going on at your airline. This is the hiring situation at my airline. If there's anything I can do to kind of help, or any questions I can answer, let me know. And that has been awesome. That really makes a huge difference. So that's appreciated. But, anyway, kind of enough about that. I just thought that, I'd kind of give you a little insight to where my head's at. But the good news is it's getting warmer out. Sun and Fun's coming. Oshkosh is in a couple months. Flying season's basically here. So a lot more flying videos coming up. Cheap videos too. We're still waiting to get the wheel fixed, the right brake liner fixed. When I tell you the weather here has been just horrendous, it really has been. But we'll get that taken care of really quickly, and then you'll see a lot of cheap videos and a lot more Cub videos as the weather gets nicer. So, and if anyone, I'm sure there's some retired airline guys and girls out there. If you guys have gone through this, just, I'm curious what decision you made, or kind of how it worked out for you guys. Because I'm going to come back to this video in maybe 6 months, maybe a couple years, and it'll be interesting to see kind of where I am at that point. But anyway, a little bit different of a video. Feedback always welcome. And again, I'll have the flying videos back up really, really soon. All right, thanks, guys.